Thanks for agreeing to meet me on the outside.
No problem. I agree that none of this should be discussed in the hospital.
Some of the doctors on staff are extremely dissatisfied with the level of patient care services available at St. Ignoble.
That's ridiculous. We are meeting federal standards at higher percentages than any other hospital in the state, and JACO gave us an A+ on their last review.
Yeah, great. But they think quality of care is eroding nonetheless.
How can that be? Corporate just gave us all kudos, and bonuses even, for excellent quality.
Well, that raises a good point or two.
Go on. I'm listening.
First of all, they all went to medical school.
I know that. I'm not stupid. What do you mean by that?
Well, they seem to think that their medical knowledge should have some bearing on the care of patients in the hospital.
They write the orders, don't they?
Sort of.
What do you mean, sort of?
Well, they say that their orders don't get followed much of the time. They refer to them as suggestions, rather than orders.
I don't understand. How does that happen?
First of all, the nurses are understaffed.
We can't help that. Hiring in travelers is too expensive.
Also, some of the nurses can't speak or understand English well enough to perform the technical part of the job.
That's bigoted and politically incorrect. Besides, those nurses save the hospital a lot of money.
The doctors would rather be bigoted and politically incorrect than responsible for the death of patients because of miscommunication.
What deaths? I don't know of any deaths due to this problem.
Well, over the years, the doctors have been well trained by risk managers not to document such things in charts. They are, however, angry enough to reverse that policy.
Good heavens. We can't have that. We'll lose any lawsuit that is brought against us.
So, if you don't want them to document the parts of the system that are broken, then, of course, there is no evidence of the same for you or other administrators to look at.
It would be discoverable. We can't have that.
That, too, is one of the problems.
What do you mean?
It's called failure of the feedback loop. Some call it groupthink. It's a sophisticated concept, Mr. Bean Counter. You'll have to think slowly.
Are you implying I don't understand systems theory?
I think it is beside the point, whether or not you understand it.
Why?
You don't apply it.
That's a lie. I'm a premier health systems management professional. I make $300,000 a year.
Congratulations, Mr. Counter. Now maybe you can earn that salary by following my train of thought. Think of me as the feedback loop right here and now.
I always thought you were a little loopy.
Ha ha, Mr. Counter. But try to take this in. In addition to the breakdown of nurse education, communication and the staffing ratios, there is the profound documentation workload placed on their shoulders. It's no wonder clinical care gets shoved to the side.
We have a quality control department for that.
Quality control is like the police.
What do you mean?
They are called in after the fact. The doctors think that applying a bit more time and effort on staff education, streamlining of documentation and reduction of patient-to-caretaker ratios would go a long way to improve quality of care.
That costs money, and besides we are saving money for the new hospital.
Do you want to go down in history as the administrator who built a new hospital on the backs of dead patients and overworked nurses?
I can't help it. State laws required that we build this hospital in order to comply with codes.
I don't think the doctors want you to violate state law. They just want you to pay attention to the clinical consequences of your administrative decisions and bend a little on the cost-cutting where it endangers the patients.
Corporate won't let me. I've got to keep cutting costs or I'll lose my bonuses, my job.
I can see why you find it difficult to do anything about the doctor's concerns.
Anyway, that's why we hired the hospitalists.
I thought you hired them to take care of patients that the primary care docs and specialists couldn't care for.
Couldn't? More like wouldn't. This feedback loop is a little like the fire calling the kettle black. Doctor, take it to the bank.
I'll ignore that, Bean Man. So you were saying about the hospitalists?
That we hired them to pick up the pieces.
You mean the unassigned patients?
No. Everything. They're supposed to do everything the system won't do, so the patients don't die.
So they are supposed to teach the foreign nurses English, call the lab every 30 minutes until stat labs are done, break into the pharmacy to get a stat nitro for their patient with chest pain, engineer their own documentation system to work around the monstrosity corporate is forcing down our throats.
Hey, wait a minute. That is the newest version of MD Manure and it costs 30 million per hospital.
The newest version of MD Manure can't even print a report. What were they thinking?
Listen, I'll admit that MD Manure is crap, but it does a good job meeting federal security guidelines and helps us document acuities and maximize revenue. You know, like charging for sepsis even when it's not there.
Pardon my persistence, but where are clinical priorities in this equation?
That would make the equation too complicated. To be honest, in administrative decisions, quality of care is only accounted for as a stop-loss item.
What do you mean?
If third-party payers pay us less because our quality indicators are in the basement, then the hospital goes belly up.
And those might be?
You know, door-to-cath time and ST elevation MIs. Time to antibiotics and pneumonia.
That's exactly my point. It's like no child left behind.
What?
You are evaluating the system by non-critical indicators, even spurious ones, then redesigning the system to produce more of these results that are beside the point.
There you go with it, system stuff again. That's my job, not yours. And what does this have to do with MIs and pneumonia anyway?
Maybe whether or not you take the person to cath in the first place instead of giving lytics, or whether you choose an appropriate antibiotic is just as important.
I can't be the judge of that. That's your job.
Precisely, and the doctors are saying that the QI system as it stands, the care management rules, the order sets, bought from experts 2,000 miles away, the dysfunctional electronic medical record, things like these all conspire to produce bad medicine, not good medicine.
How can that be?
They are forced to spend most of their time complying with rules and less on delivering good care. They say this is true of the other care providers as well. Nurses, aides, respiratory techs. It goes on and on. What's worse, the doctors and nurses in training are learning how to prioritize the paperwork over actual clinical care.
Excellent. I knew I'd finally get some good news out of you.
Don't you get it? Pretty soon, no one will even know the problem with the patient care they are rendering. The other day a nurse in the ER wouldn't start CPR because he'd been taught he needed a written order first.
Maybe the problem with patient care is only in your mind. You've been talking to the old grumpy doctors. You need some new blood on the team. I'm going to hire in some new doctors fresh out of residency. They are nice and compliant. Can we talk about golf now?